Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Voice of Crypto's podcast, where we bring experts from the space of Web3, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies to demystify the wild west of finance for our listeners. I am your host and Voice of Crypto's editor in chief, Varuni Trivedi, and today we have with us Aishwary Gupta, who is a CA by profession but is currently working with Polygon Technology, the creator of Matic altcoin. Hi, Aishwarya. Really glad to have you today.
Hi, Varuni. Pleasure is all mine.
Well, you are quite a renowned name in the space, especially in India, and you're working with Polygon Technology, but your qualifications as a CA do put you aside in the uh, let's say traditional finance space as well. So seems like you do have a good understanding of both the traditional markets as well as the risky asset markets or cryptocurrencies. Can you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself and how you decided to get into cryptocurrencies, Web3, which are essentially called the wild west of the finance world?
Absolutely. A little bit about my background. So, I completed my chartered accountancy in 2018. Then, I completed my executive education from IIM Calcutta. And I, like in everyone else, have started my career with working in a Fortune 500. I started with PwC, then I went into American Express, and yeah, that. But one thing that I realized working in a corporate is that if you have to move fast, that's not how corporate works. And this was one of
Hmm.
the major ways in which, like, one of the major challenges that I felt. And while working in like one of the in the financial sector itself, in the
Hmm.
treasury department, the only thing that I was trying to do was trying to get something better, a better software, probably a better way in which we can do the transactions. Because while working there, we had a team of like 20 people, and there were different time zones and everything. And if
Hmm.
you I saw the pain that the team had. Like you are sitting on the desk till 11:30 at night just because the some market has to start at that point of time. So
Hmm.
I mean that was the place where I started to find what could actually work to loosen up the pain that we have. So that's where I stumbled upon blockchain. I was just studying, and I like when I read about Ripple. Ripple was my entry point.
Yeah.
So American Express is one of the initial investors in XRP.
Yeah.
So we already had that collaboration. So I just started studying about it. Then I found out that we already have this collaboration. We already have a
Hmm.
blockchain team set up. So I started talking to them, finding out how exactly this works, and
Hmm.
that is where I entered into this whole industry. And once I was in this industry, that's where it fascinated me a lot. Like comparing my traditional finance way, where we have to like prepare so many documentations, work on
Hmm.
so much things and everything like that. You did not have to do any of those things, and it was just a few seconds and the transfer would go. And
Hmm.
there was no penalty, there was no late fee, the timing was perfect, so we could manage the liquidity even better, and all those things. So that's where that was the first. So we were starting to create a use case between for the Amex cardholders, for the Amex merchants in US and UK. So that's where I started, and then we developed some of the other few blockchain use cases within the company. And
Hmm.
later, like when COVID hit, so at that point of time, Amex revenue tanked by like 83%. So
Hmm.
that innovations and everything that were happening, that came to a standstill to only just carry out the necessary things. And
Hmm.
that's when I ventured out into other streams, which is like I joined Zeppe, which is an
Hmm.
Indian cryptocurrency exchange. I used to manage the treasury there. And apart from that, the OTC desk, which was there. So all those things I managed there. Shortly after that, I went into Seba Swiss, which is a Switzerland bank. And there I was a research analyst. I used to write publications for various Ivy League people to go ahead and understand the nuances of blockchain.
Hmm.
And then finally, I ventured into Polygon, because I mean, being in India, and you want to get into your Google. So
Hmm.
for
Yes.
that, I think in India, I think Polygon is today as well like the biggest project out there in public blockchain. So that was like my I would say verification towards all the efforts and everything that I've put. So immediately the moment I got someone contacted me from Polygon to join, I couldn't say no. So that was where
Hmm.
I went into Polygon. And because I am someone from the finance domain itself, DeFi is something which I relate to a lot because I have worked with fintechs. I have done a lot of case studies in my executive education
Hmm.
with these fintechs. So that DeFi was a space where I actually fit in because I knew what the problems are, what are the things that are missing, and then
Right.
DeFi was actually trying to solve that. So that's my little bit of history about how I came into the whole thing.
Sounds really good. And your journey, even though long, does sound fruitful now that you are in the Google of Web3 and blockchain, which is Polygon, at least in India. And while I understand that for maybe someone like you with a background in finance, understanding decentralized finance and blockchain technology could have been relatively easier, but if you have to explain it, let's say to a newbie, or if you have to explain what Web3, blockchain, and decentralized finance is to someone in layman's terms, how would you do that?
I mean, explaining things is something like when you talk about blockchain, I mean, there are
Hmm.
a lot of definitions and everything out there, but let me explain it with something that people can relate to. And it's a very simple example as well. Like often, like in a lifetime, no matter what walk of life you're from,
Hmm.
and you would have gone with, let's say, your office colleagues or your friends or someone like that to a movie. And often when these friends are new and you're going to a movie, it's not that everyone is going to buy their own ticket. It's like one person will go and buy
Hmm.
his own ticket, and then everyone will go ahead and that's the expense, whatever the total is, and distribute it. Now, when we are doing it, what happens is often it also comes to our mind. I don't think that person actually spent that much money on the ticket. Probably he would have a bank offer, but he did
Right.
not tell us. And but we cannot go ahead and say that because that would ruin the friendships. So
Hmm.
that is something which is a phase that everyone has gone through. Now, how does blockchain come into the picture? So let me explain it to you. Like one solution
Hmm.
is could be like you go ahead, let's say you're five people, you create a Google document, and with that Google document, what you try to do is you just add everyone's email ID and then show everyone, okay,
Hmm.
this is the expense. You just upload the screenshots and everything. Now, while you're doing that, some of the problems that probably we would not see because that's a very small thing to do is first thing is that all the data that you're uploading on your Google Drive and everything, that's on a centralized database, which
Yeah.
means that that database is something, if that database gets corrupted, I know there are ways in which they copy that data, but there is always a time gap between. So chances that your data might be lost is very high. So, and if you're trying to attack a central point and there are
Hmm.
10,000 attackers trying to hack a central point, chances of it getting hacked is way more than, let's say, a point where there are 10,000 places where the same data is stored. So
Hmm.
that's the first problem where like you go ahead and you are poised towards an external attack.
Hmm.
Second is, let's say when you're storing this data towards a third party,
Yeah.
obviously everyone says that your data, your privacy, and everything like that.
Hmm.
But personally, I don't believe that when you go ahead and when you have created a software, you cannot go ahead and you do not know its nuances where you can go ahead and exploit it. So that's another way in which like your data could be open towards an
Hmm.
internal extraction or internal mining as well. So that's another problem. Now the third problem is when you look at these giants, these behemoths, they have the full control and authority towards what they can actually do with that data
Hmm.
or what kind of terms and conditions they can put. Like 2 3 years back, AWS services rolled out a special version of Java and said that okay, if you want to go ahead and deploy your softwares and everything on AWS, you have to comply, otherwise we will not
Hmm.
entertain you. So
Right.
these are the conditions. So that's the third problem that we have. Now when we bring in, let's say, blockchain into it, or let's say I'll explain it with the first example, which is Bitcoin. How Bitcoin solves this? So very simply, the data which was being stored at one single place and was a single point of failure, here that data, like in Bitcoin, we have somewhere around 15,000 nodes currently.
Hmm.
And most of those nodes store the data because they're running so many big nodes and everything, so they will store that data. Now, with that, what happens is like if you're storing that data, there is this data is getting stored at say 10,000 places. So now, if you want to go ahead, attack that data and corrupt it or modify
Hmm.
that data, it's you have to go ahead and change 51% or more of that databases in
Right.
order for your data to be accepted, which means it makes it fairly impossible to do it. The second thing is when you go talk about internal also, like anything that anyone can do or change things from internally. That again, same thing applies. You have to have a control over 51% or more of the
Mm.
total computing power in order for you to go ahead and do it. And in a world where we live in a constraint of computational power, this
Mm.
is something which is very difficult.
Largely
And the
impossible.
last, exactly. And the last thing is, like, you cannot go ahead and arbitrarily go ahead and say, hey, we run the Bitcoin nodes, and there's this one person. I want to go ahead and instead of 21 million bitcoins, I want to make it 21 billion bitcoins, and he can just
Yeah.
go ahead and do it. I mean, the last update that happened, the Taproot update, that required 90% of the miners to approve it.
Mm.
So that is how what happens is you're democratizing that power. So in short, what happened here is, like, basically nothing changed, just that the way in which you stored data changed. So earlier you were using a centralized database, today you're using a distributed database.
Mm.
And one more thing that happened here is, earlier Google and all those FANG companies were in control of your data and were deciding the fate of that data.
Mm.
Here you do not have that kind of a thing. Here the power is decentralized, and when the power is decentralized, it is majorly in public good that these decisions will be made. So that is how, like, what this is what blockchain is all about. Blockchain is nothing but a storage mechanism which creates immutable records of data with a particular timestamp, which means that once this data is put on a blockchain, there will be a timestamp when the data was added, and now it is fairly immutable for you to go ahead and change it. It is
Mm.
not managed by a single person, but it is completely or fairly decentralized for anyone to go ahead and make ad hoc decisions. And adding just one more thing, which is cryptography, a way in
Mm.
which you go ahead and put that data on chain through secure cryptography is
Mm.
something like from where you secure it is all about. Now,
Right.
once we see DeFi, DeFi is just a use case of it, which is just a financial use case of it. And
Mm.
it comes from a very one simple thing, which is called as smart contracts. Now, again, telling you what smart contract is, I think everyone who is a listener here would have gone ahead and used an ATM, or would have gone ahead and used a product dispenser, something like that, which are
Yeah.
always there on airports, etc. Now, that's what a smart contract is. A smart contract is basically nothing but an if-else statement, which goes ahead
Mm.
and tells you, if this condition is fulfilled, then you do this, otherwise do this.
Mm.
And that is just put on code. And now when you're doing this, what happens is you eliminate the what ifs and all those things, or anything that you feel like in a normal contract. What happens is, let's say I go ahead and say, I am going ahead and I am putting you, or let's say I'm going ahead and I'm paying Varuni somewhere around $12,000,
Mm.
and I say that I want to pay it on 1st of every month, and I executed this particular contract, let's say on 21st of March. Now, when
Right.
I execute it, there are two things that could be made out of it. Because I made the contract on 25th March, you could assume that because the first of this month has been already gone, so
Mm.
you probably on 25th are liable to get $1,000 because, yeah, that was promised, but the contract was a
Mm.
little late. According to me, it could be that I should be paying you from the 1st of April. So there's an ambiguity in a normal contract. But with a smart contract, what happens is, when the code becomes the law, you
Mm.
cannot go ahead and you cannot play with that. If it is whatever it is, we both will understand it in the same manner.
Mm.
And when it imbibes all the qualities of a blockchain, all the characteristics that a blockchain can give,
Mm.
it becomes fairly powerful, and it does not require any intermediary in between.
Right.
So that's where what happens is you eliminate all these intermediary. So on one side, let's say when I want to transfer those $12,000 to you, one thing is I go to a traditional bank, I'd give them the standing instructions. Let's say if it's a fairly big amount, I would go ahead and also take escrow services and
Mm.
also hire a lawyer to ensure all these things are happening properly. But on the other side, what I can do here, what will happen is you will have multiple intermediaries, you will have high cost of transaction. And the third thing is there is no guarantee that the transaction will still go through,
Absolutely.
because there could be a scheduled maintenance. The bank will not stop for you. So that is something which is there. As compared to a smart contract, what you do is you just put in the condition, transfer the money in the smart contract. It acts like an escrow for you. And the moment you specify the address to which the money has to be sent, that because blockchains are up 99.999% of the times, there's a
Hmm.
very high probability that your transactions will automatically flow and you do not even have to worry or check every month. So every month you're getting the payment and I don't have to worry about a lawyer, an escrow
Hmm.
service, a standing instruction, and all those things.
Hmm.
So that's what like smart contracts enable. And this is what DeFi is all about. DeFi is all about how these conditions are being built to build those financial infrastructures. And through
Hmm.
that, like I'll talk maybe later on, give you an example on DeFi to make you relate about how these things are changing the way or how they're bringing efficiencies. But yeah, that's what DeFi is.
Makes sense. And you did sum it up in, like I requested you to, layman's language for our viewers. Now, a lot of reports have been coming up. A recent chain analysis report said that India is one of the fastest growing crypto markets, and the rate at which market is increasing is over 600% between July 2020 and June 2021. So I feel like with a growth that massive, the market could do wonders. So, what do you expect from the Indian markets in the, let's say, coming decade? And what are the major potentials that you see in the Indian Web3, blockchain, metaverse, NFT markets?
Okay. So there are two things which I would like to fairly discriminate between, or I would say differentiate between.
Hmm.
First is the chain. First, let's talk about the chain analysis report. So it talks about two things: the number growth, massive growth, or the
Hmm.
implosive growth of the number of users. Now, the problem with that report is that that reports of with Indians, because the regulatory has not been that favorable. What happens
Hmm.
is that sometimes one exchange is accepting cash, sometimes some other one is accepting it. So what happens is we end up opening our accounts in all the exchanges. The growth that it shows, it's not the true growth. Probably I personally at that point of time, while I used to trade a lot of crypto, at
Hmm.
that point of time, I fairly had somewhere around 4 accounts. But for chain analysis, that is they are four individuals. But for me, it's just one
Right.
individual. So that particular report talks about that report does not take this fundamental assumption that it
Hmm.
could be like not just one per like different persons, but it could be just one person having multiple accounts. And this is a very normal thing because of the Indian regulations that one person has multiple accounts because he does not know when which account will not function to add
Hmm.
cash. So that was there. So that is one. And talking about the volume, the basic reason why the volume imploded was not because
Hmm.
people started to understand the technology, but because of a lot of hype that got created in the Indian market. A
Absolutely.
lot of celebrity endorsements came into the
Hmm.
picture, and a lot of YouTubers who do not even know what cryptocurrencies are all about
Hmm.
starting to talk about them, and because they had some good followership and everything, then that made all those things mainstream. I mean, I still remember one of that TikToker or a YouTuber. I'm not remembering his name right now. But that
Hmm.
person going out and saying, if you buy Shiba Inu and it reaches $1, we all will be millionaires. Now, what that person financially does not understand is for Shiba Inu to go to reach $1 per token, you have to go and put 5 times the liquidity that is revolving in cash across the globe
Right.
into that token to make that token go $1.
Hmm.
So that is the kind of hype, that misinformation that started to go ahead, and
Hmm.
type of information and everything that imploded this market. But
Hmm.
now when a true, like right now, if you talk about the market right now, it has been a bear market. A lot of $1 billion protocols like going to zero almost. Now
Hmm.
this is where I think what happens is the learning phase starts. I mean, the for me, I would say that the biggest thing that would make you learn is when you lose your money. Obviously, I would not want you to lose your money to learn something, but
Hmm.
most of the people learn it the hard way. And
Right.
so that is something that is going to happen. So yeah, there has been a very implosive growth. That growth will slow down now because the bear market came in and a lot of people realize that their so-called safe crypto has made
Hmm.
their investment into zero. But also, like, so if I look about a decade from now, what I particularly see is a lot of education coming into this space. And when
Hmm.
education comes into this space, people understand why they're actually going ahead and particularly trying to buy. It's not a get rich quick scheme where you just
Right.
invest $1 and you'll get like $1,000 next day.
Hmm.
So So that kind of a growth is something that I particularly see, because there are a lot of startups coming in also talking about education, and a lot of people are taking interest into it.
Yeah.
So currently what I see is that graph going down because of people losing money, and they're feeling that they have been cheated, when in turn that they did not do their due
Mm.
diligence. So but overall what happens is, like, this is a very healthy thing. It is not something which happened out of the blue. It is not something that the venture capitals are leaving. It's not that
Mm.
the big investment houses are leaving. I mean, there's a huge amount of dry powder which is just standing aside for
Mm.
you to just go ahead and get that regulatory clearance. And the moment it does, there is a huge amount of money that will go ahead and that will be inflused into the market.
Mm.
So there is a huge amount that is waiting to be getting in, and a lot of people ready to educate people and everything. I mean, a lot of fintechs in India, obviously, I cannot name because of the NDAs, but a lot of biggest, like one of the, a lot of such fintechs in India which are there, they are already ready with their use cases for blockchain and cryptocurrencies,
Mm.
to just go and deploy the moment the government says, okay, we are fine with it finally.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that's something, yeah, that's something which I particularly see, which is like a good growth, but right now a slow growth.
Hmm. Especially because of the bear market, which has essentially scared off a lot of newcomers. And just yesterday, I was reporting on how even long term holders are in a net realized loss at this point. And a
Mhm.
strong long term holder base has been very attractive to newcomers when they think of their profits, long term holders as profits. For now, however, even that is an area where newcomers are facing a lot of skepticism, I feel. So, do you have any advice for people in the bear market for them to navigate through this vicious cycle of buying the dip and losing money and then buying the dip over and over again?
Got it. Okay. So, personally, like, there are three things that I would advise a lot of people. The first thing is, uh, start learning about what these
Hmm.
things are all about. I mean, the biggest reason why, I mean, I go ahead and interact with a lot of people who are youngsters, as well as a lot of people who are maybe at the CEO, CFO levels. And one of the biggest problems that I particularly see is lack of information. Like,
Hmm.
they have no knowledge about what exactly are all these things, and most of the people have got into this is because of the peer pressure. Their friend going out, like, I've heard these stories, like, one of the friends going out and investing, let's say, something like $100 in January in
Hmm.
Dogecoin, and getting like $1,000 and going ahead and buying an iPhone or something like that. And because of that, your friends also get into it. They didn't do
Hmm.
not know that they ultimately end up making losses, and then they say that cryptocurrency is bad. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the first thing is education. You need to educate yourself. Education is very important. And if you educate yourself, I'd say that is one of the best ways to get into crypto. Second is, so that's the first one. Second is trying to do a DCA, which is dollar cost averaging. Now, for
Hmm.
someone who does not understand dollar cost averaging, it's basically like, let's say, just like mutual funds, to
Hmm.
explain, I think, in Web2 language. In mutual funds, what you do is you keep on investing a particular amount every month. You do not care about how much prices have increased or how
Hmm.
much prices have dropped, thereby at the end averaging your total in cost of investment and giving you a greater return.
Yeah.
So that is also something like people should start to think about, because you do not go ahead and, let's say, you want to go ahead and invest like a lakh. So two things.
Hmm.
One is, like, you do not invest 1 lakh rupees just because right now you had 1 lakh and you just invested. Just
Hmm.
try to do it in small tranches. And second is, do not put all your crypto in one particular cryptocurrency. I mean, this
Yes.
is something which a lot of people did when you were talking, and they got badly wrecked in like UST. A lot of
Hmm.
people had their full income. I mean, there was this guy,
Yeah.
who was a non-technical mind. He
Hmm.
actually went ahead and, based on, so he's a very big TikToker, has like somewhere 3-4 million followers and everything. He
Yeah.
went out and bought a place for himself at, the price was somewhere around 1.5 million.
Hmm.
He had somewhere around 800K, and what he did is he spent 200K in just like the account name, and the rest invested the complete amount in UST to get a
Hmm.
20% return so that he can pay his EMI. boast that he got a house for 200K, which was a 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Now, right now, he just has 200K that he paid out, and now he has nowhere to like go ahead and make the balance payment. So
Hmm.
those kinds of things are like, this is just one story. There are lot of such
Yeah,
stories
yeah.
that are out there.
Especially after the Luna fall to the dust.
Exactly. Exactly. So just ensure that whenever you're investing, do not invest everything in one thing,
Hmm.
because it will hurt. You do not know which cryptocurrency or which particular project is going to long that last.
For
So
sure.
that is something which is there. And also, like, take lesser risks until unless you're educated. So try to
Hmm.
get enter into blue chips, which are like top 20, top 30 tokens, which are there, most of them, after you have done your research. And
Hmm.
the third thing is like, you have educated yourself, you have gone ahead and put in your money. And the third thing
Yeah.
is, which is like one of my favorite thing is, instead of going ahead and investing your money in crypto, invest
Hmm.
that money in your education and try to earn crypto through doing various things in Web3. I
Right.
mean, there are a lot of platforms, like I can just name one, like layer3.xyz.
Hmm.
They give you like 100 to 500 to $1,000 just to write good articles, do a proper analysis of a particular project and everything.
Hmm.
So your knowledge can get you crypto, and that is, I mean, the best investment. And
Absolutely.
now, like, 90% of my investment is through this. I go ahead and give a consultation. I go ahead and let's say help a particular project or something
Hmm.
like that, write articles and all those things. And that way, what happens is, even if it is going to zero, I did not lose my money out of it.
Of course.
So that is also something that people should start looking at, because
Hmm.
there are a lot of such opportunities where you can actually earn. And so it's like the opportunities are not gonna end. And I
Hmm.
mean, today, based on your skills and everything, people like designers and everything. I think I remember a phase where these designers used to get like 15,000, 20,000 a month,
Hmm.
and today they are making 1,500 to $2,000 a month.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of change, and that's the kind of difference that already is being
Yeah.
brought to their life. So yeah, I mean, these are the three things that I would say for anyone in the beer market to enjoy the next bull market.
Yeah. Very nicely summed up. And I feel you said it very simply that diversification is key to effective investment, not just in a bear market, but even in a bull market. And your advice for newbies does suffice, I feel. And I think we have come to the end of our episode today with you, Aishwarya, but it was really fun to have you on board. And I feel like your perspective was relatively new to the kind of media that is present around cryptocurrencies in the market, and things like educating yourself and truly understanding the potential of a project before uh, jumping into it or investing into it is what will keep people afloat in the cryptocurrency space. So thank you, I feel, for putting all of that so subtly for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed this episode with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, and would love to hear once this is published. Thank you.
Sure, sure. I will get back to you as soon as this is out.